All right. People are still coming in. We're going to get this thing going. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Glenn Pisani. I'm a current board member for SEAA. I work for Mass Building and Bridge out of Norfolk, Massachusetts. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us to learn a little bit more about the new ANSI standards and how they affect steel erecting. We have two good panelists today that are both SEAA members. We have Mark Anderson with Columbia Safety and Supply. Mark is an at-height safety expert with more than 10 years of experience in the industry. He's worked together with manufacturers and contractors globally to design, train, and implement unique fall protection and rescue systems. During his time, Mark has had the opportunity to provide safe and efficient access solutions on notable projects such as the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, the MSG Sphere in Las Vegas, the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, and most recently the Amazon HQ2 in Arlington, Virginia. Known for his ability to simplify complex concepts, Mark is a passionate and he shares his expertise with helping individuals at all levels to be confident in their abilities to work safely. We're lucky to have Mark with us today. We also have Bryan McClure from Trivent Safety. For over 3 decades, Bryan McClure has held multiple roles in the construction industry. It was with his father who instilled a strong work ethic and exposed him to the trades growing up. His most notable experience came when he worked with a large international steel erection company, where he was first employed as an ironworker in 1994. In 2018, Bryan went on to found Trivent Safety Consulting along with 2 partners, which now has offices in several states, including Florida, Texas, Wyoming, and Colorado, where it's headquartered. In 2022, the training center, which included an indoor structural steel training tower, was established in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, where Bryan has lived for 43 years. Outside of work, he likes to travel with his wife, Joanna, of 24 years, and their children, Caleb and Sydney. Once again, thanks for joining us. This is something that SEAA wants to do. We want to get our membership together and kind of, it's not extremely formal. We're all kind of at our desk working during the day here, and we just want to talk about things that are going to help our members. We've been brainstorming and we've come up with some other ideas. Probably every quarter we want to do another webinar. Our next is going to be with Deltec, and we're going to go over how the right accounting system can transform your business. I know a lot of us started off small, and the more we grow, the more complex things get. And, sometimes you need to take a step up from QuickBooks. So more information will be coming out on that in the latter weeks as we, close in on this one. This will be taken care of. This is our first in a series, and we look forward to having a good day, a good hour here. So with that, we're going to have Bryan take us away.
All right, everybody.
One last thing, though. If you have any questions for our panelists, use the chat button. I'll be monitoring that, and when they're done, if you have any questions, I'll read them off. Use the chat button and not the Q&A. Thanks.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So sure everyone's heard quite a bit about the new ANSI Z359.14 standard update. And so the whole purpose of this presentation here today is just we just want to let all of our steel erectors know, how is this going to affect you? What do you need to pay attention? What do you need to do? So to start with, ANSI, which ANSI stands for the American National Standard Institute, the safety requirements of self-retracting devices. They just updated the standard, and the standard that deals with self-retracting devices or SRLs. So SRDs is self-retracting devices. SRLs is self-retracting lifelines. They're interchangeable. The standard .14 that deals with these was updated recently, and it's actually had a couple pushbacks when it was supposed to be go into effect. The new drop dead date, effective date, is August 1st of this year. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those modifications to the standard are. I'm going to talk about it from a steel erector perspective and maybe your safety department, what you need to do for you and your end users and how it affects you. And then Mark's going to talk about it, from a distributor standpoint, and he's going to give us some good information about, all the different companies and what they're doing for the different units and how ready they are for the new rollout in August. So these standards from ANSI, so you might see them if you look them up on the internet, ANSI/ASSP. So ASSP is American Society of Safety Professionals. So those standards were originally introduced in 1992 with the publication of the ANSI Z359.1. That was the first standard that we had that addressed personal fall risk systems in the general industry. Since that time, they've come out with lots more standards that have common definitions, how to manage a fall protection program and the elements of that, how to work with positioning and travel restraint systems, as well as rescue systems. So lots more standards have come out since then. But as you probably may know or may not know, not all standards that come out are required by law that we follow them, right? And so OSHA will incorporate by reference, which is just a fancy way of saying, the standard, OSHA standard cites an ANSI standard. If they do that, we have to follow it. But in effect, ANSI standards are non-mandatory. They're voluntary standards by a group of experts in the industry that help us define, better ways to go about our work, and they get real specific in the details. So these standards are not currently incorporated by OSHA, but you could still be cited by OSHA for not following the standards. So even though it's not mandatory to do so, and it seems unfair and illogical, it's true, you could still be cited referencing these standards. And the way they do that is OSHA is going to typically use their standards to establish general standards the employer's got to meet without specifying how. OSHA is going to give the employer discretion to decide how best to achieve the standard goals. But OSHA and the courts do say how they expect employers to use discretion provided by the standard. Among other things, employers are expected to consider any existing consensus standards that is non-legislative standards, not law, that have been adopted by industry and any other non-governmental organizations. Even though those standards aren't legally required, they represent a consensus of what experts consider safe. So OSHA, and we've seen this with our clients, might regard an employer's failure to adopt a voluntary standard relating to an OSHA requirement as evidence that it didn't take reasonable steps to comply with the standard. All right, so with this new rollout of this new standard, the two key issues, they had a lot of issues that they tried to resolve with this new standard. And Mark's going to talk about some of those on his part of it, but from a steel erector perspective, the two issues addressed by the standard that directly affect steel erectors and end users are, number one, they wanted to simplify the types and classes of SRLs so that end users can quickly identify what the product's capabilities are. So they want them to have the ability to look at it and know how they can use that without getting too in depth and reading through all the nomenclature and the user manuals and the fine print and everything to figure out what it can do. The second piece of this is they wanted to standardize labels and markings to make clear ANSI compliant products capabilities. So anyone that has just now finally wrapped their head around leading edge products, that update came out in 2012, and it feels like just within the last couple of years. So in construction, we're slow to adopt things, right? And in the last couple of years, we've just wrapped our head around, all right, if our guys are tying off, this is what a leading edge is, and if we're anchoring below our D-ring, we got to use leading edge products. Or if our cable or lifeline could come in contact with a surface during the fall, we got to use leading edge products. Well, we just got our heads wrapped around that, and they've kind of changed it up on us. And really, the change it makes it easier for the end user, because anyone that's dealt with multiple manufacturers before, every manufacturer would go about it differently, and how prominently they displayed on their product that it was leading edge rated or not leading edge rated. And some of them were terrible. You had to really read the fine print on the back labels of those yo-yos. Sorry, I call SRLs or SRDs yo-yos sometimes, former iron worker. You have to really dig into it deep and, read the fine print to know if you could use it in a leading application. So number one, first thing they did is they've gotten rid of leading edge types designation for the new standard. So we have SRLs, which is your current, hold on one second, I just got ahead of myself. So real quick, the classifications that they changed it to are class 1 and class 2. So class 1 you can use with the anchored at or above your dorsal D-ring. So wherever if it's a SRLP, a personal SRL, you can anchor it, directly in line with your D-ring or above you. Same thing if you're using an SRL in general, your big yo-yo. So the two types, or the three types they've got SRL, right? Your regular SRLs. And then they've got SRLPs. This is going to be your personal SRLs, the ones with it attached to the end user on right below the dorsal D-ring. And then they got SRLRs. So the SRLRs are for retrieval or rescue. They've done away with that leading edge designation. So when we're talking about these with our iron workers, we don't want to talk about them as far as leading edge products or LE products anymore. We want to, define them as class 1 or class 2. Class 1 can be anchored at or above the dorsal D-ring. Class 2s can be anchored above the dorsal D-ring or below. Okay, so this is just going to show you kind of where we were at and what they've replaced that with the new ANSI standard. So number one, we used to have class A and class B. Class A, had a short stopping distance, max arrest distance of 24 inches, and an average arresting force of 1,350. And they've now, and then they also had class B, which had a longer stopping distance up to 54 inches or 4 foot 6 inches, and an average arresting force of 900 pounds. And so they've replaced that with class 1 and class 2. And when you're thinking about these SRLs, I just want you to think about, class 1 is for overhead anchoring of your SRL or tie off if you're using a personal SRL. Class 2 is going to be what we considered leading edge products all the way up until this point. So class 2 is, for anchoring below you, or if your lifeline can come in contact with the steel when they fall. Okay, all retractables used to only be classified for overhead use unless they had the leading edge designation SRL LE. Again, they've changed that. Now it's class 1 and class 2. Class 1 for anchoring above the D-ring, at or above the D-ring. Class 2 is for above or below the D-ring. The class A had a 2 foot arrest distance with an average arrest force of 1,350 pounds, the old class A. The old class B had a 4 foot 6 max arrest distance with an average arresting force of 900 pounds. And now what they've done with the new standard is they have changed it. So both class 1 and class 2 have the same maximum arrest distance. And they've met in the middle pretty much for average arresting forces at 1,350. And so if you're familiar with the old class Bs and or leading edge products in general, the whole philosophy of those products is that it stops the worker, it arrests the fall over a longer distance. And so when you stop a worker over a longer distance, it's going to put less force into the cable, especially when we're worried about that when it comes in contact with the steel. So I always tell everyone it's like, class A, we have 2 semis running down the road. A class A is going 100 miles an hour. It only has 10 feet to stop. The class B's, going 100 miles an hour, it has 100 feet to come to stop. So the worker is going to feel less force when it's got a longer distance to slow it down, like your class B's, as according to, your class A's are going to come to a screeching halt really quick. You're putting more forces into it. So what they've done is they've now made it so both classes have a 42-inch max arrest distance and a 1,350 pound average arrest force. Now, neither of them have changed. OSHA law still says the max arrest force we can have is 1,800 pounds. We can't exceed that because, if we get too much more than that, we're going to start doing damage to the worker when we catch them. But this part is really, it's simplified it for definitely for safety professionals when you're creating safety plans and doing submittals ahead of projects. You don't have to try and figure out what kind of overheads we're going to have on site, your SRLs on site, and then you definitely don't have to figure out as a worker, how far am I going to fall, and start doing a lot more math, right? It's going to simplify it and standardize it once everyone is using these. Okay, this little graphic here just kind of depicts what we've been talking about. Again, this is the biggest change for steel erectors, is knowing which retractable they need to use. So if they're just going to be using it in an overhead situation at or above their dorsal D-ring to anchor their SRL, all they need is a class 1. It's going to have a white background, square, black letters on the inside of it. And then you could also use class 2s above your dorsal D-ring as well. So class 2s can go either way. Class 1 can only be anchored above your dorsal, at or above your dorsal D-ring. For a class 1, your max free fall distance is still 2 feet. And then when we get down and we want to anchor below our D-ring, so for iron workers, this is most prevalent with our deckers. Our guys are throwing deck, they like to tie off to, I call them the whirly birds, the little deck plates. Those guys are always going to need class 2 SRLs whenever they're doing the anchoring below their dorsal D-ring. And their max free fall is 6 feet. So, and that's, the height of a average worker's dorsal D-ring is about 5 feet off the walking working surface. And then when you have dorsal D-ring shift or stretch, that's when we get up to that 6 foot of free fall. So this is just showing you the different applications. So a class 1 overhead tie off on the top there, top picture. And then if we're doing foot level anchorages, we need to have a class 2. In addition to the class 1 and this class 2 standard labels, all class 2 SRLs got to include a full fall clearance table or diagram as part of the product in the user instruction manual now. So right on the labeling, they're going to tell us, how much clearance, how much open air we need below the worker's feet if they were to fall on one of these class 2 units. This is a big deal because if you're working on a Corps of Engineer job, they will hold your feet to the fire if your product says you got to have, 20 feet, like this product here from MSA. So I got a Fall Tech unit picture, but this is an MSA user manual on the left. And it says it's got to have 20 foot of clearance minimum if you're going to use this product, right? So you get on a Corps of Engineer job, they're going to hold your feet to the fire that even if, you're doing your math and with, your safety factors, you're figuring your guy's going to fall less than that, whatever that's going to say on that label, they're going to hold your feet to that fire on Corps of Engineer projects. All right, so class 2 devices are now required to have an integral energy absorber on the lifeline itself. So most manufacturers were already doing this. This is their way that they solved, to make their overhead units leading edge capable, is they added this external shock pack on the end of the lifeline. So most companies have done that. I only know of one company that figured out a way to do it with an integral inner braking system inside of the casing here. But what this new standard says is if you're going to label your product as class 2, you got to have an external shock absorber on your SRL, unless it's an SRLP, so it's a personal SRL, and it's attached into the workers right below the worker's dorsal D-ring. Then you don't have to have the external shock absorber on the lifeline. And most manufacturers are putting it right up here behind the units. And it has a dual purpose. This shock absorber right here obviously is a shock absorber to lessen the forces into the line, but it also serves as a little bit of a back pad for these units here. Okay, one thing I wanted to bring up, it seems like I'm still going around and trying to get everyone educated on this. So most manufacturers, a few years back, depending on which manufacturer it was, came out with a product advisory or a just information to tell you we can't use pigtails on our dorsal D-rings or D-ring extenders and then hook class 2 retractables to them. So what they found is these retractables, these class 2s, when you extend that shock pack and you get it away from the worker's body a little bit farther because they're hooked up to the pigtail, when the guys were falling, this front edge of the shock pack was coming in direct contact with the leading edge and it was severing it right here. And so, most manufacturers came out with this detail telling us don't do that. Everyone that has an external shock absorber. So something to be aware of. And again, this goes back to our guys throwing decking. And I get it. I'm not very flexible, and trying to hook myself up with a yo-yo, a class 2 yo-yo to my own dorsal D-ring is nearly impossible. But different manufacturers come up with different ways to solve this. I know 3M has got a detachable shock pack that you can hook it directly to your dorsal D-ring, and then it's got a quick connect right here. So you can use that as a pigtail. But you just got to really enforce this with your folks. If you're going to be using a class 2 SRL and it's got an external shock pack, do not hook that to a pigtail or dorsal D-ring extender. Again, this is only for if you've got an external shock pack. If you've got an overhead or a class 1 yo-yo, it doesn't have an external shock pack, by all means, you can use these pigtails, just not with the class 2s. Okay, big question we get is, and I know Mark's going to touch on this a lot more, is, with this new standard to roll out, do we have to go out and just buy all new products? Do we have to go buy a bunch more stuff? And the answer is, for the most part, we would say no. You don't have to do that. You can keep using your current SRLs. They're still good as long as your competent person is doing the inspections and they meet all the requirements that the manufacturer sets out for the inspection of the equipment. As long as you're continuing to meet all those inspections and it's in good shape, you can keep using those on federal OSHA jobs. And most manufacturers come out with a technical memo that said something to that effect as well. So the things we want you to be wary of, if you're going to work on a USACE or a United States Corps of Engineers project, they are governed by their own safety manual, the EM 385. And the EM 385, that they go lockstep with ANSI, right? And so if you're going to be working on a project on a base or government facility that is governed by EM 385 and the Corps of Engineers, you need to really get a hold of your GDA, your government designated authority, prior to doing any safety submittals, or definitely before mobilizing on site, and talk to them and see, how are you guys enacting the new ANSI Z359.14 standard? Are you requiring us to only bring on compliant equipment on site right from day one? Is there a break-in period? Are you enforcing it at all? And what we found is every different base or military complex or government project, their GDAs all operate a little bit differently. Some of them are lenient with stuff. Some of them are like August 1st. All the stuff on my job on my projects are going to have, class 1 or class 2 ratings on them, all the nomenclature. So you really want to find that out ahead of time. Other entities you need to be aware of, if you're working on with any on any projects that have a state OSHA plan. The two that come to mind for me are definitely Oregon and California, Cal OSHA. Those two also like to go lockstep for, whatever ANSI updates. They like to roll it right out as law right away as well. Okay, so what should you do next? What do we want you to do next? So number one, get out there and train your employees on this new update that's coming out in August. I'd get ahead of it. It doesn't have to be crazy. You bring them into a class or anything. It's a simple toolbox talk. Do a toolbox talk with them. Explain to them, when they see these labeling coming out, these new labels coming out on products, what that means, and start educating them on class 1 and class 2, just so we can get that nomenclature, right into the mix of things out there for us. And then you want to make sure that once you train them on what that means, also refresh them or train them on how to identify what class of SRL they need for the type of work they're doing and the type of work environment they're doing it in. Next, you want to just take a look, everyone's probably backlogged all throughout the rest of this year and into next year, I'm sure, for work, by the sounds of it. Take a look at all your projects that are coming up, and things that should perk your ears up are, are we working on a Corps of Engineer job? Do we have, any state plan OSHA's projects that we're working on? And what are they doing? How are they enforcing these new ANSI requirements? Just so you can get ahead of the game, because you want to be ahead of the game just so you can get with your procurement department and have them get the right equipment. And that's the other thing I'm going to tell you is, moving forward, if I own a company, I don't buy equipment unless it has the new classification on it. Why would you? Because at some point, we're going to have to be using all this. And a lot of what drives this are general contractors. A lot of us are wearing safety helmets nowadays, and it's not required by law, but the general contractors are pushing it, and we're having to wear those safety helmets. You can almost guarantee the same thing's going to happen with this new ANSI standard, and only bring in SRLs on project to have the new updated labeling system on it. So Mark's going to talk a little bit more about this, but as of August 1st, distributors can still sell their old stuff. They're like, we call them legacy products. They can still sell those. There's nothing that says they can't. Contractors, all of our steel erectors, you can still use all the legacy products, right? Because it still meets the intent of the law for MOSHA. But then starting August 1st, manufacturers, if they want to say that they are ANSI compliant with the new ANSI standard, they've got to make sure that all their material and test requirements that their products they're putting out there meets those new requirements. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Mark now. Mark's got a good handle on all the different manufacturers and what they're doing and how ready they are, so he can kind of get you up to speed on it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Mark's going to pick up here.
See if that kicks on. Thank you, Brian. Some great information there. Thank you, Glenn, for kicking us all off, and thanks, SEAA, for having us here to chat on this today. So as Brian was going over, a lot of changes specifically to what the manufacturers are doing, what they're required to do, the labeling they're putting on it, the testing that goes into that. There's a slew of additional testing requirements that we didn't even begin to touch on, but we really wanted to focus on what matters to the steel erectors. How are they going to have to change their day-to-day? What things do you need to be on the lookout for? And to Brian's point, the number one thing is what product is in the field, in your team's hands, in your training centers, whatever it might be, and that education piece. To Brian's point, getting into the new standard product, the sooner the better. A big point on that is that the Class 2, in order to be Class 2, it has to first meet all Class 1 requirements. So historically, we've seen products, especially in the leading edge category, that had such a variety of application limitations. So maybe this 3M product can only be used in foot level tie-off applications and can never be used overhead. Or this device can be used up to 2.5 feet below your dorsal D-ring, while this one can go up to 5 feet. I could have probably got you at least 30 different SRLs with 30 different limitations if I sat and really tried under our previous standard. So what this new one really does is provides that peace of mind that if you wanted to, you can go out and you can purchase just a Class 2 unit for every application you have. And that's going to be approved. Obviously, you have to read those manuals, look at that labeling, and use it within the parameters, but they're putting those front and center by putting it on the devices directly. So we're putting that power in the individual's hands that's actually out using equipment every day. They're able to read that, see that, whether the manual was thrown away when it showed up on site, or if this was just a unit coming out of the yard that's manual's been long gone since 10 years ago. So if you really want a peace of mind solution, going Class 2 allows you to go into any application under this new standard and have the right piece of equipment. So that's kind of my first point there. But yeah, the manufacturers, they have got to start getting this product built to the new standard, and everyone is at a different place in where they are at with that. And everyone is also at a different place in how they're addressing existing products in the field already. Things that you guys are already using that might need repaired, or things that you might already have that haven't even been used yet. So this slide here is telling you exactly as Bryan went through, if you have that product as an end user, as a contractor, as an erector out in the field, you're fine to keep using that under the same guides that you had before, testing or inspecting, doing all your checks, logging it, and making sure it's up to standard as previously judged. Distributors like Columbia, the team I'm a part of, we're able to keep selling that product as long as it's on our shelves, as long as people are requiring it, etc. The manufacturers, on the other hand, cannot produce outside of this moving forward. So we're going to look at 3 today. We're going to take a look at Faltech. We're going to take a look at 3M, who covers the Protecta and the DBI Solid brands. And then we're also going to take a look at MSA. Obviously, I'm sure there's many of y'all out there using some different products that we're not looking at today. You're going to have to reach out to either your distributor or to your manufacturer's reps. And I would advise doing the same even over these 3 brands, because there's a lot of moving parts and some yet to be determined processes and systems. So we'll dive into that a little bit here. First off, Faltech. So I want to review, before I dive into the products that are going to meet the new standard and those that aren't, what the policy is as far as repairs on the previous products, just how they're handling what you already have in the field. So Faltech has made this incredibly easy. They've also been addressing this probably the earliest of any of our manufacturing partners out there. And I believe the first products were released over a year ago, or just around a year ago at this point. So they've got time in the field under the new standard. They've got feedback. They just got that data set. The part numbers for any legacy product, that existing product that's already been released from the previous standard, those part numbers are going to remain the same. As the new product rolls out with the new labeling requirements, with the new testing, they're going to hold the same part number as their legacy counterpart. So that change, you're not having to learn new SKUs, you're not having to order something different. That's just already going to start coming with that labeling. And those products are already leaving the manufacturer well before today as we speak. So I know for Columbia, we already have product on the shelf through Faltech that is labeled to the new standard. That's been readily available and coming through. So we're excited about that. Additionally, repairs, they are going to continue to repair legacy product. And when you send that legacy product in, it's simply going to come back with the new standard updates. So for anything that is upgrading to class 1, that is a label change. They're gonna, when you ship that in for repair, the label will be switched out and it'll meet that new standard that tested to it. So that's something you can do if you want to meet compliance already. If your units are already working, you don't need them repaired, you could go ahead and send those in and get them updated to the new standard and back in your hands. So that's just a rolling change. Nothing changes to the way that you go about handling it. But let's look at the products they have, that legacy product, and see what's happening under the new standard. So the Contractor Series, this is Faltech's entry-level series, if you will. Contractor Series is all converting over. We're going to see class 1 on the previously overhead-only devices, and we're going to see class 2 on the leading edge devices under the previous nomenclature. Now, you'll see the overheads going to class 1, they're just going to need that label change. Whereas the leading edge is actually going to have some component change out. That's going to involve that shock pack. So the whole cable assembly would be replaced in this scenario. But if you're in this series, you are going to be rolling into that new standard. Duratech series. There are a few within this family that are not going to meet the new standard. Now, to Bryan's point previously, this still meets previous testing and can be cited under OSHA as approved. However, with the general contractors driving this, similar to the helmet comment that he made, as well as the general duty clause being able to cite that there was a new standard, new data that proved a better option, that might be a hard push in some scenarios. So those products are going to be the compact overhead cables, those will no longer be meeting the current ANSI standard. And then their existing personal leading edge units under the Duratec, those will not meet the new standard. No discussion of discontinuation at this point, but they won't be upgraded. They won't be meeting that. So that's the Duratec series. Then they have their new series that meets the standard. This is not legacy product. It never was tested to the previous revision. It is only to the 2021 standard. So here is that replacement for the Duratec Personal in their FTX series, already labeled to the Class 2, available now. The FTR being their replacement for the Block series, available now. And then the FTX Overhead being their replacement for any compact units for overhead use, meeting that Class 1. So that's going to be how Fall Tech is addressing the situation right now. Of course, reach out to your distributor to ask further questions about your product on hand. Reach out to a manufacturer's rep directly if you have that relationship or contact. You can reach out to us at Columbia if you have further questions. Just a baseline look at that product series. So now we're going to look at 3M under the DBI and Protecta brands. So Protecta, popular series of units out there. This is going to be in that legacy product, and we are going to see some of that not meet the standard in these personals. These personals are not going to be updated. They will only meet that OSHA requirement as mentioned previously. Now, we will see these overhead units going into Class 1 and Class 2 options. However, 3M is not addressing replacing existing product to meet the new standard or updating it. So there are mechanical changes that need done. There will be new part numbers rolling out. So those new part numbers will be required to meet the new standard, but your existing product as it stands currently cannot be reclassified and updated to the new standard. It will still be able to be used, as we mentioned, under that OSHA guideline and tested to the previous standard. But for anybody trying to meet 2021 compliance, they would have to get into the new SKUs as those get released. Those are being released over an 8-wave plan. We're currently on wave 4 of 8, with the first of the Class 2 options being released this Friday from 3M. So they've released a few Class 1 options in waves 1 through 3, and then started releasing their Class 2 options here in wave 4, finalized with wave 8 leading into August. So that's the Protecta Rebel series. The Ultralock series. This is a group that is going completely away under the new standard. We are not going to see this meet the 2021 standard. So far, we're being told that these will still be repaired as long as parts are still available. There's no concern that they would have to stop doing that, but they won't come back. They won't be upgraded to the new standard. They will simply be OSHA compliance only. Smart Lock series. Oh, I need to go back. Both of these are going to be meeting the new standard. So for those of you who are in the Ultralock, this would be the obvious switch. Moving into the Smart Lock, one of DBI's more recent releases in the SRL family. Again, legacy product that already existed to the previous revisions. It cannot be upgraded, sent in to be made compliant, similar to the Fall Tech. You can continue to use it under OSHA, but there will be new SKUs coming out to replace this product. And in order to be 2021 compliant, those new SKUs will have to be obtained. We're seeing the same thing in the Nanolock series. Neither one of these is going away, but they are going to have to be new SKUs to meet that new standard. These historically have been non-repairable units anyways, considered disposable, so they'll continue to be so, replacing with the new standard. And that covers 3M. So again, 3M, your legacy product, if you want that to be compliant, they do not currently have an option to send that in and have it upgraded, updated, whatever it might be, and sent back to you under that new standard. You will have to buy new SKUs, some of which are not released yet. So there's still information to come in the DBI Protecta world to figure out exactly what needs to be done. MSA, very similar with DBI in that sense. No legacy products will be permitted to be updated. There's going to be new SKUs, new versions coming, no release schedule that I've seen yet. But they do have a few products already out, which we'll get into those. But that being said, VTech, no more. Personal or overhead, these are not going to meet the new standard. The V-Edge, same thing, not going to meet the new standard. V-Shock Mini, not going to meet the new standard. And the Workman, also not going to meet the new standard at this point. There's potential that some of these might be upgraded and updated, but they will likely be released under new series. Any legacy product can be continued to be repaired up until the point that they no longer have parts for these products. Currently, the temperature there is that MSA is moving quicker to discontinue that, whereas DBI hasn't mentioned anything at this point about discontinuing the repair process there. So of the three, Faltech is currently the only one that has a solution for legacy products being upgraded. Also the only of the three that is not changing part numbers completely. So keep that in mind, anybody out there using MSA or a DBI 3M product. For MSA, here are the three options that they've released that are meeting that new standard. So they do have product available. They have a personal in the class 1, they have a traditional SRL in the class 2, and they have a personal in the class 2 as well. Keep in mind, I'm just showing you series. So there's going to be single leg, double legs, multiple different lengths available. It's just the series that's going to meet the class or not. So again, reach out to your distributor rep, reach out to your manufacturer rep, whoever it might be, to get those more specific details. But that being said, it's kind of a wrap up right now on those three manufacturers, what they're doing, and kind of some questions that you might be able to ask your reps, your manufacturers about how they're preparing. Hope this helps out, and I'll kick it back over to Glenn.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Brian. Good information. I'm not sure if anyone, I haven't seen any questions yet regarding the material we've gone over. I know I have a couple. On the manufacturing end, generally speaking, I mean, what's the cost differential between a class 1 and a class 2? Why would you even play the game to go with the 1, to put yourself in a position to have a guy use it in the wrong way?
Well, that's really hard to answer right now, given the given the lack of new SKUs that are available from a few manufacturers. So if you noticed on the slides, for those folks that do have units available, the personals are really the only ones that we're seeing class 1s as far as new product come out. That legacy product, like the contractor series outside the leading edge from Faltech, that is going to meet the class 1. I don't know that there'll be a price increase. Currently, it's the same. But as far as general, what we're seeing, you're looking at about the same cost differences that we were seeing from a non-leading edge to a leading edge. So without knowing pricing, without knowing brands, you can kind of imagine about the same price differences there as when you're looking at a class 1 versus 2.
Okay. What else did I have? And you've addressed our labeling, and I mean, right, obviously, not everyone's up to speed, even in the industry that's what they're providing. They're not, we only have one option right now that's addressing our old units. All right, oh, I got one now. Hold on. Okay. Question is, will these slides get sent out to everyone?
We're actually recording this, and so once we're done here, I'll get this to SEAA, and they can push this out on the website, I'm sure, so one way or another, somehow, however they want, so people can watch it for future, if look at
Yeah,
it.
good. I think that's a good idea. We could make these available that way. All right, so that's, we'll be working on that to get that out. Anyone else? All right. Well, we did good on time. We're about 11 minutes early to the end of this Zoom. You know, I have some, just reading here. I mean, I think you guys have really answered a lot of the stuff that I've written down.
There is, I've got one thing that, a question that comes up for us quite a bit has been, obviously this standard change is specific to the world of SRLs, yo-yos, whatever we might call them out there. The anchorage though, that we're connecting to has been the biggest question. Is there any changes to that anchorage that we're using? You know, Bryan's scenario with the decking, these butterfly anchors on the roof, with these new arresting forces, is there any change to your anchorage? That's another kind of convoluted question. For the most part, there shouldn't be. Everybody should be using a 5,000 pound rated anchor point. That's still qualifying within there, but those average arresting forces are going to be listed on those anchors and those SRLs. So of course, always make sure that you're matching up, taking a look at what anchorage you're using. It's never a bad idea, especially if you're changing a piece of equipment, just to make sure everything's lined up. But for the most part, if you're using a certified and engineered fall protection anchor, you should not have to have any concern with the standard change in that sense. That's been a big one that comes up quite a bit.
It looks like Scott 17 had a question he asked, who is on the ANSI staff to decide changes like this. So to answer your question, Scott, and Mark can chime in here too, it's a lot of manufacturers that are on the ANSI Z359 committee. They update these changes. There are some people from industry on there, and I think even Columbia Safety. Mark, don't you guys have some guys on the ANSI committee?
We do have a member of our team that sits on that committee.
So there's definitely you know, a lot more private manufacturers more than anything, but I know they're always looking for people from industry to serve. So if you're interested and you want to help shape how these new standards roll out, you know, I'm sure you can make that happen.
Yeah, I would add to that. You know, Bryan mentioned ASSP early on, but I think that organization is somewhat looked over in this series of events. Even if you can't get onto that ANSI committee or find time to do that, getting involved with ASSP, whether you consider yourself a safety professional or not, maybe you're a business owner, maybe you're a general super, whatever it might be, being involved in ASSP, that's where the questions are coming, that the efforts and standard changes come from. So ASSP is out there polling their members, polling the industry to find out what are the biggest problems that we're seeing, what are the safety issues, what do you want to see resolved? And one of the driving responses has been SRLs are what we're using, personal retractables are what we're using, but it's confusing, it's convoluted. We're still seeing falls as the #1 citation in improper fall protection, and seeing the effects of that in SIFs. So joining ASSP, getting involved, that's going to help drive the conversation about what needs to be fixed, not just in this standard, but other standards, and why it needs to be fixed. And the more that can come from the voice of the people in the field doing it, the erectors like yourselves, the better we're going to get standards around the whole industry. So get involved.
I think that's a big part of SEAA too. It's a place for businesses, owners, iron workers to get involved and have a voice in the industry. You know, we can get together for an hour and talk about something like this. It's something that's going to affect us all. You know, 20 years ago, where would you be talking about this? I'm not sure. Here we can share our views and our knowledge with each other, and kind of piggyback off each other to make a stronger industry. Um,
And we had another question, Millie. So Millie asked, Millie said he's a metal roofing contractor, not very familiar with the erector system, and asked if there's any class training to start the system, doing this on the East Coast. And so Millie, kind of piggyback off of what Glenn said. Number one, at SEAA, the Steel Erection Association, it's very low cost to join as a member. And we give all of our members tons of resources all the time, drop test reports for fall protection and training videos for ironworker training program through NCCR. And then we got a good partnership with BBSI as far as giving safety plans and whatnot to members as part of a member benefit. And so I would say start there. And we have safety flashes coming out every quarter. We got all kinds of stuff you can use for training specifically to this. The big thing is for you, and the training doesn't have to be extensive. It doesn't have to, like I said, it doesn't have to be formal classroom training. It can literally be a toolbox talk that you have the subject line up top that says what you're talking about, and then have everyone sign in on that toolbox talk. That's key, because OSHA looks at toolbox talks no different than any other type of training, right? Training is training in OSHA's eyes. But the big part is you document it and you know that all your employees have gone through it and you have proof of that should you ever need it in the future. So I would say, just like Glenn said, start with join SEAA and see how many resources we can give you for free.
Right. Plus you get the free videos. We have a brand new, we have like 70 videos that are made available, all training videos. It comes with your membership. You'll be able to check them out. It's a good deal. And for the cost of a membership, you're going to be exposed to a lot of things that would cost you a lot of money if you had to get it privately. So, all right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thanks, Mark Anderson. Thank you, Bryan McClure. And thanks to everyone that attended. And we look forward to seeing you in August.
Thanks, everybody. Stay
Thanks,
safe
everybody.
out there.
Take care.
Take care.